Today is the Holocaust Remembrance Day, marking the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. In Hebrew, Holocaust Remembrance Day is called Yom HaShoah and is marked on a different day every year. And that's because when the actual date of Yom HaShoah falls on a Friday, the State of Israel observes it on the preceding Thursday. When it falls on a Sunday, Yom HaShoah is observed on the following Monday. Hence, this year, it is commemorated today.
It's Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, and Israelis pause to the sound of a lamenting single-tone siren across the country. Holocaust Remembrance Day commemorates the 6 million Jews killed by the Nazis during the Second World War. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and President Isaac Herzog attended a wreath-laying ceremony at Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem. During the ceremony on Wednesday, Mr. Bennett said the most difficult wars today are not comparable to the Holocaust.
My brothers and sisters, the Holocaust is an unprecedented event in human history. I take the trouble to say this because, as the years go by, there's more and more discourse in the world that compares other difficult events to the Holocaust. But no, even the most difficult wars today are not the Holocaust and not comparable to the Holocaust.
By the organization
Dova Jovajevis was in her 20s when World War II started, and she was forced to leave Kyiv to escape the Nazis' invasion of Ukraine. At 100 years old now, she has had to flee Ukraine again, this time in the face of the Russian invaders.
I have lived through two tragedies. I am twice a refugee. I was fleeing twice. I was fleeing from Hitler then. Now I have fled from Putin. Naturally, it is hard. I believe the humankind won't allow it. I believe humanity must learn something. In any case, I am expecting that all the Western countries won't allow all this. They'll put a stop to all this. Sort out that Putin. I hope for that. Otherwise, it is impossible to live with all that is happening. If somebody decides on the destinies of people, and it is absolutely not clear why.
Jovajevis is one of the almost 300 Jewish Holocaust survivors from Ukraine who have been given refuge in Israel since the Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his troops into the former Soviet Republic 2 months ago. When the invasion started, she initially locked herself in her house all alone before deciding that she wanted to immigrate to Israel and stay there for the rest of her life, believing it to be the safest place for Jews to live. Becoming a refugee is especially hard for the elderly, who thought they would never have to confront war again. Some 161,400 Holocaust survivors and victims of anti-Semitism during the Nazi era live in Israel. Tanya, north of Tel Aviv. Roman Haller's story is slightly different. He isn't sure exactly what day he was born, but believes it to be somewhere between May 7th and 9th in a bunker in a forest in 1944. Haller's mother was pregnant when she and 11 other Jewish people were hidden by the Polish housekeeper of a Nazi family in their basement before being moved to a bunker when their hideout became too dangerous. Now aged 77, he lives in Munich, Germany, from where he calls on people not to forget the atrocities of World War II.
Remembrance is so important, so that what happened is never allowed to happen again. Never again, as we say. And in this respect, it is important to remember at least once a year what happened and how it came about. To fight against hate, hate is something. Everything starts with this hate.
In the meantime, throughout today in Israel, television stations are devoting broadcasts of documentaries and interviews with survivors, and radio stations are playing somber music.
And VOA's Linda Gradstein is in Jerusalem. She joins us now. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining us. First off, what is the standard greeting for a day like this?
Well, it's the same greeting as any other day. You would say shalom. But there definitely is a somber mood today.
Earlier today, people across Israel stood still to commemorate the day. Speak to us about the significance of observing that moment when you leave everything to ponder for a few minutes or seconds.
It's actually very dramatic. You know, on the major highways, the traffic just stops. On a bus, people stand up in the middle of the bus. And it's a 2-minute siren, and standing at attention for 2 minutes is actually kind of a long time. And, you know, you definitely, almost everybody in Israel has some sort of family connection to the Holocaust. So, you know, to stop everything completely for 2 minutes on the highways, on the television, everything just stops and everybody stands at attention. It's almost like it's a little bit frightening in a way, but the fact that everybody is doing it at the same time, even little children from ages 2 or 3 are taught about this and taught that this is something that they should do.
So this is what everybody does.
Yes, everybody in the country. You know, there's no law that says you have to do it, but it's certainly, you know, and what people do in the privacy of their own home, obviously nobody knows. But certainly in public, everything stops and people stand at attention and for 2 minutes think about the Holocaust. It happens again next week, by the way, on the Memorial Day for soldiers who were killed in Israeli wars. The same thing happens.
Prime Minister Naftali Bennett spoke about hate, and many Jews now having to escape Russia's invasion of Ukraine can relate to that even now. Ukrainians feel they are hated by Russians. What are some of the stories you've heard about what Israelis think of the war in Ukraine, some of whom once fled the country?
Sure. So there's definitely the public sentiment seems to be on the side of the Ukrainian people. And there have been demonstrations in Israel saying that Israel should take in more refugees. So far, Israel's taken in about 15,000 refugees, several hundred of whom, as you said in the previous piece, are Holocaust survivors. That said, the state of Israel as a government has been trying to preserve some kind of neutrality in order to keep good relationships with both Russia and Ukraine. In fact, the Prime Minister Naftali Bennett even visited Putin in Russia and offered to be a mediator between Russia and Ukraine. And the main reason for that is that Russia controls the skies over Syria. And Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes against Iranian arms making their way to Hezbollah. As those convoys go through Syria, Israel often bombs those convoys. And if there were tensions between Russia and Israel, Israel could lose its freedom of action in the skies. So Israel has not provided Ukraine with any arms or anything like that. Israel has said that it will start providing flak jackets and helmets soon, but that hasn't happened yet either. But there is a sense among the Israeli public, especially those who have had relatives who lost in the Holocaust or who are survivors themselves, that Israel should be doing more to help Ukrainian refugees.
And Linda, what kinds of programs, events are planned for a day like today?
Well, there's probably thousands of ceremonies. I mean, there's a national ceremony at Yad Vashem, which is Israel's Holocaust memorial. But yet, and in addition, every school has a ceremony. Every youth group has a ceremony. Every synagogue has a ceremony. My own synagogue last night had a program in which a 105-year-old woman who had survived the Holocaust spoke about her experiences. So it's, you know, it's not a vacation day. Everybody goes to work or to school, but there are thousands of ceremonies and commemorations across the country.
In memory. We would like to thank you, Linda, and Shalom. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.